Hi all, I have another thoroughly outrageous and quite funny game to show you from Magnus Carlsen today. This is from the 2014 World Blitz Championship. The game was against Laurent Fressinet, who, as you may know, we covered one of his immortal games against Kramnik. He can be a brilliant attacking direct player, so a very strong grandmaster in his own right. He was playing with the white pieces and played e4. Magnus played knight f6, the Alekhine defense. So e5. And now the usual move by far is knight d5. But here, guess what Magnus played if I give you 5 seconds. So what's an interesting alternative? Okay, there's not too many alternatives actually, because the knight can't go to h5 or g4. There is actually knight g8. Now knight g8, undeveloping the knight immediately. It's called the Brooklyn defense in honor of the hometown of American Grandmaster Joel Benjamin. So he calls it actually his pet line, so he must have used it quite a bit in Blitz. And although, according to Wiki, although black is seems to be giving quite a bit of odds of free moves, white only has a small advantage according to theory. So how is this actually possible? And the variation goes back to 1905. Apparently Aaron Nimzovich with white checkmated Adolf Albin on the 34th move. But it's a committal decision, a pawn move. So, and it's going on to a dark square. So you might think, well, hang on, aren't the light squares a little bit weaker? Especially f5 is often, if you provoke this kind of pawn chain with e5, often f5 is useful for black. So let's see what happened here. White now played d4, and we have d6, knight f3, and now c6 is played. On the very few games that exist, d takes has been seen before. For example, this position where white is doing okay, but it's not completely crushing just yet. White's got an advantage technically, but this makes it very unusual. c6, and we have the move h3 in this untrodden waters. Perhaps bishop c4 though is the best move. h3 seems geared up against bishop g4, but actually if bishop g4 here, then can you guess what would white play? White has bishop takes f7 and knight g5 check, and that'll be a massive advantage for white. So bishop c4 seems viable, and if black's best is something like this, not that, rather d takes, knight takes, e6, that would close in the bishop. White would have a big advantage there. Perhaps black does d5 though, and white is comfortable though, but maybe it's not like the end of the world for black yet. So h3 though, bishop f5, so the bishop comes out of the pawn chain and is able to exchange itself off. And you could argue, well, this is a kind of French defense without the bad bishop. D takes, knight d7. Black has no problem piece at least, and quite a solid pawn structure. After knight g f6, we have another kind of maybe overly stereotypical move, knight c3 here. It kind of blocks the c pawn. So if white wants to play a c4 d5 break, that's going to be delayed. It is the developing move, but maybe queen b3 is a little bit more critical, hitting f7 and b7. So for example, e6 we just take on b7, no problem. And on knight d5, which, okay, it looks at the bishop, but that's immune because of f7, that's soft spot. If white goes for the soft spot, you know, so knight takes, queen takes, f7 is mate. And if this is, maybe this is black's best here, f6, it looks a bit odd to do this, but if maybe black isn't that much worse. Okay, black's not getting checkmated too quickly after this. So anyway, but it might still be a critical test, queen b3, to think about. Knight c3, knight takes e5, bishop takes e6. So black's ultra solid here. We have white castling queenside, bishop e7, king b1. Black castles, queen g3, and now knight h5, just hitting that queen. Because otherwise white could build up with knight e4 if left undisturbed, putting pressure on f6. So for example, as an example, b5, knight e4 is annoying. And even here, if white can double the pawns, at least that's something to show from the opening as an advantage. But knight h5, keeping things pretty solid and persistent. And in fact, white's now varied with h4. We have knight d7, knight e4, and now queen a5. So looking at e5 a bit more, queen g3 protecting e5, that's taken, d takes, rook a d8, knight d6. So it's as if white still has got something to play with. A hole on d6. Is that significant? Knight f6 check doesn't really do too much, doesn't really achieve anything that much. Although here, if this could show actually an advantage for white. Knight f6, pardon me, may be interesting from that point of view. Using d7, yeah, this is a very tactical idea, very tactical to sort of get a kind of bind. You could call it a bind. So yeah, maybe that was an attempt, but knight d6 was used, and this creates a kind of double-edged. Is it an advantage? Is it a liability? Who knows? After bishop takes, if the pawn takes here immediately, but rook takes is played, which actually technically has a flaw to it. It seems e takes was the way to go from a real accuracy point of view. So hitting queen, that should be about even. But on rook takes d6, and here Magnus played rook d8. In fact, queen d2 might even be a slight advantage for black. Queen e3 hitting a7 and the queen. But this seems as though black's now threatening to checkmate on the back row. It seems as though black has a small edge here. If anyone has a small edge, controlling the d-file, that'd be quite nice for black. Okay, so rook d8 though, instead of queen d2. But on the other hand, this is a more long-term burner to try and exploit this d6 pawn without dropping any pawn in the position. So in a way, it keeps the tension going more than that variation. So rook d7, b3. Maybe a3 is a little bit more solid to give the king some air. So b3, h6, queen f4, queen c5, g3, and now f6. And it looks rather a cheeky idea that the king can come up, maybe e5 and king e6, to grab this pawn. This pawn's not really going anywhere. It looks to be more of a liability right now. King comes up to f7, e5. It really looks as though it's going to be engulfed, like in a James Bond film, the evil villains engulfing spaceships out in space. This pawn's about to be engulfed. Rook c3. This is a difficult position, and this is not giving maximum resistance. Perhaps a move like f4 would be more dangerous for black. But here, yeah, this actually immediately is a mistake. Black could have just played rook takes d6 here, so hitting the queen in return. So this, black's doing really quite well there. But also Magnus's move is really strong anyway. This is an alternative, very strong move. Queen b4 pinning. The thing to avoid here in this position is the trap kind of set, which would be queen takes d6, but in fact rook d3 is nasty winning material there. So anyway, queen b4 is a very strong move. King b2, rook takes d6, so officially a pawn up. Yes, Magnus has actually managed to turn the tables with this very rare opening indeed. And this is now just painful. Black just gains more and more, and this rook and pawn ending, Magnus is absolutely brilliant at endings, and he's making inroads now, gaining space, getting that d3 square for usage, and now getting more space, and now rook d3. Yeah, white's getting into big trouble whatever happens here, it seems. For example, e4, king e5, f4 is going to start breaking up black's pawn structure. But here, yeah, that square was conceded d3, and this is now completely lost for white after king d5, king d2. The game ended here. The black king can walk on the light squares after king e4, for example. getting a Zugzwang and then getting into f3 and everything's going to start dropping off. So I thought that was kind of a funny opening, but there is some logic to provocation. Pawns do not go backwards. So it's actually, quite a committal move, e5 anyway. But obviously the Alekhine defense is usually with knight d5. But maybe in Blitz, it's an interesting weapon in Blitz, because it makes the opponent even less prepared to play knight g8. So maybe there's some evidence here. It's worth a punt just for fun in one's online Blitz. Okay, hope you enjoyed that and got something from it. If you did, you can play me and other YouTubers using that bit.ly link. So that's 2 capital Y, small v, small a, 5 capital M, capital B. That bit.ly link, or the link in the description. If you register, I'll be able to invite you for a game. You can play against other YouTubers. So I hope to see you at Chess Bold as well. Thanks very much.